Hello everybody, this is Vinyl Rich here. This is my video response to Declan. What is punk? Um, don't get me started on what punk is and what it isn't. To me, punk is an inclusive thing. It's one thing that drives me up the wall is when people, well, I shouldn't say it drives me up the wall, but a lot of people I've heard people call the Suburban Lawns post-punk, Sham 69, post-punk. These were punk bands. Maybe if you weren't around and you're younger and okay, you might. I understand, but the whole post-punk name came about when Sex Pistols broke up and Public Image released their first album, and I don't know what critic it was. He claimed that this is post-punk now. And actually, the album, it's a punk album. It has a couple of long jams on it, and the band has admitted that pretty much they had to. It was filler because they had ran out of money for the studio because they spent all the money on weed, and they had to, they did these two jams real quick and to fill up so they could have enough for a full-length album. But it pretty much it was a punk. I mean, but where did punk start? Was it the garage bands from the '60s? Velvet Underground. Is that a punk band? I mean, I think it's punk is an attitude, and Velvet Underground had that attitude. The garage bands from the '60s had that attitude. Iggy and the Stooges had that attitude. But a lot of people, they say punk and they think it all started with the Sex Pistols. Now, this is a great album. I love this album. If you listen to this album now, or maybe younger people that listen to it, it's hard to believe that people thought it was so radically crazy. It's a good rock and roll album, and that's what punk is. It's good rock and roll. And there's Sid Vicious, more of the English safety pin punk. That's The Clash, another band that people associate with punk. Another English band from that era, the Stranglers. They were a very early punk band. But before that scene in England, there were bands like this, Devo. Their first recordings are, I believe, in 1974. And you had the Ramones. New York, the whole New York CBGB scene. I mean, basically the Ramones toured England, and every city that they played in, months later, there were punk bands sprouting up. A really great New York band, CBGB band, the Cramps. But Blondie was a punk band. People don't think of Blondie as a punk band, but that's where their roots are. They started in the CBGB scene. Here's a band from New York, the Contortions. No, they were the part of the No Wave, but it came out of punk. L.A. had the Mask scene. The Go-Go's came out of there. They were a punk band. They came out of the punk scene, the LA punk scene. People might find that hard to believe now, but yeah, Jane Wyden, she used to be called Jane Drano. Here's a compilation from LAN, is it? Yeah, LAN. A collection of Los Angeles rock and new wave bands. See, new wave was a term that was coined. And same with post-punk. These are just even alternative and grunge. These are all terms created by the record industry, the record companies, to try to sell people punk music because they think it might be a little more salable to the masses that way. But this is a early LA punk band. It's got Oingo Boingo on it, of all things. Rubber City Rebels, they were good. The Cats were pretty good. The Weasels, the Surf Punks, the Low Numbers, they were good. And a few others. Another early LA comp is Saturday Night Pogo. And I think it's got the Low Numbers again, Backstage Pass, Vom. That was a band. They were crazy. The Motels. Another LA band that from the 80s, Gun Club. People don't think of them as punk, but they came out of the punk scene. I mean, that's where they grew out of. And in New York, you got Sonic Youth. They grew out of the punk scene. Here's a Sonic Youth, Lydia Lunch, Death Valley album. Now, the album that really started the divisions there already was like the new wave and the punk. The Skinny Tie guys were the new wavers. The Safety Pins were the punk. But this band here, or this album here, GI by the Germs, as far as I know, this is the first hardcore punk album. And when this came out, it kind of defined, okay, this is hardcore punk. And then after that, you got all these divisions, the New Romantic, all these different subgenres. And here you got an English 80s band declaring, punk's not dead, the Exploited. Another English, this is a great compilation, Oi the album. I mean, side one of this is great. Oi 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 by the Cockney Rejects, Rob a Bank, Peter and the Test Tube Babies, Wonderful World by the Foreskins, Have a Cigar by the Postman, Daily News by the Exploited, Generation of Scars by the Terrible Twins, Guns for the Afghan Rebels, Sunday Stripper by Cox Bar. I mean, Guns for the Afghan Rebels. I mean, these guys were singing about Afghanistan in early 80s, folks. I mean, that's one thing about punk songs. They were about something. Here's an English comp, Punk and Disorderly. Really good. Another one, Punk and Disorderly, Further Charges. And the third one, Punk and Disorderly 3, The Final Solution. And then here's a Vancouver, Canadian punk rock compilation with bands like the Subhumans, the Metros, No Exit, B-Sides. Here's a German compilation of punk bands. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce those bands' names. Here's a Polish punk band compilation. And this is all after punk was declared dead by the media. This is a Japanese punk compilation. Here's a Washington, D.C. Some of the early singles put on a comp on Discord Records. This is a really great compilation from Northern California and Nevada bands. Maximum Rock and Roll, Not So Quiet on the Western Front. This is a really good record. This album here, I pulled this one just because of the title. When Men Were Men and Sheep Were Scared. That's a great. It's got Rhino 39, the Vandals, Red Beret, the Crude. Now the Crude were a really good LA band that was really underrated. Falling Doll, Secret Hate, Nip Drivers, and Target on Demand. I pulled this one here, Sudden Death, because my buddy was in one of these bands, Moral Decay. Scott, he was a drummer for Moral Decay. And I also knew the singer of Crankshaft. Lionel Lousy, that was his name. Now, that brings us to this band. Is this band punk? They started out as a punk band. Green Day, they started out in the on Lookout Records. Man, what was the name of that place where they used to play? But the members of Green Day, they used to sleep in a park in San Francisco. You know, they've gone on to, I think, sell. They've sold 75 million records, and they're one of the most popular bands in the world now. And I guess you could say, you know, they have a Broadway play now, so that's not so punk. But they started out as a punk band, and me, I don't like to divide so much. I mean, it's so gray. Where does it start? Where does it end? I mean, even with heavy metal, where does heavy metal start? You know, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple. You know, these were hard rock bands, and you got Judas Priest. Is that, you know? It's not black and white. It's all gray. And you know what? It's all music, people. Let's just enjoy it. I mean, if you like one type of music, that's fine. You don't like it, that's fine. If you like this, you like that. Whatever, you know. Just enjoy what you enjoy. And this is my response on what is punk. I mean, punk to me, it's an attitude. It's a rebellion. So maybe Green Day isn't punk anymore, but they started out as punk, and that's it for me. Take care, guys and gals.